Yeah, g'day and welcome back to my channel. I like doing sort of mechanical hobbies, and my main project at the moment is this beautiful old Schaublin 125 CNC lathe. It's in great mechanical shape, but its controller was ancient, so I'm modernizing it to Linux CNC. The old electrical cabinet just took up far too much space in my workshop, so I'm miniaturizing it. Since I made a bit of a hash of this with the plasma cutter, I mean I've got gaps as much as like nearly 5mm with this piece here, and the general gap is too big as well. The next thing I need to do is just start filing away at this, dressing it down and tightening up these gaps ready for welding. I've got those seams now ready for tack welding. There's two skins here, 2mm and 3mm underneath. I tacked the 3mm, but I never tack welded the 2, so let's go through and tack weld that first. I also need to do a little edge repair here, so I've got a bit of copper pipe that I've crushed to use as a heat sink behind, and let's see if I can fill this without burning it out. Right, that gives me something to grind back. Now that I've welded up those two sheets, I can start putting the whole thing together. Now the big trick here is going to be to attack without welding it to the table. Now, moment of truth, did I stick it down to the table? That's good. No, I didn't. Let's see if the door still fits. Oh yeah, cool. That's a better size.
Kilometers later.
As you can see, I went out to a couple of mates' places and got help with welding this up. Big thanks to both Jörg and Franz for their assistance there. My mate Franz also needed to paint some tank of his, so he did my Schaublin oil tank at the same time. Thanks a lot for doing that, Franz. When he prepares a tank, he spins it around on this homemade machine with a bit of gravel or a bit of abrasives in it to clean out all the rust out of the inside of the tank. It's pretty cool. It has warped a little bit, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of forming to get this back into shape. While I get it all cleaned up, everything nicely ground and panel beated back into shape, I don't think I'll be boring you with that. A lot of grinding. When you've got a really horrible job like this to do, I reckon you basically got two options. You're either go into berserker mode, blast through it until you're completely finished all in one go, fast as you can, or how do you eat an elephant mode? You know, there's got to be 6 sides, do 1 side per day, in a week you're basically finished. There's a really thick kind of filler undercoat here, and the fastest way to remove it is just use the scrape.
Approximately 10 hours later.
Well, that was a truly horrible job, so I'm glad that's done. Now we can move on to spraying. Hey, speaking of spraying, there's a big forest fire going on down in Wiener Neustadt. On this mountain here, I think it's the Rux, and they've been fighting it for a few days but haven't got it under control. And now the Italian government sent 2 of their Canadair Firebombers up to help. But the cool thing is they're picking up water here in the Danube spillway. I'll see where they pick up water on this run and then jump on my bike and go and have a look at it, I think. Now, I'm no professional panel beater, but I'm pretty happy with how that's come out. I'll bog the seam there, sand it down. It's looking okay, I think. Once you catalyse this stuff, it seems to go off pretty fast, so I guess the key is don't make too much in one go. I think they body putty the rivet heads on some of the business jets to make it look luxurious and beautiful finish. Can't say it works that well. Aircraft do tend to be pretty flexible, so with the pressurization loads and stuff like that on the fuselage, over time you get the rivets kicking off the body filler and the paint, and sooner or later they'll look exposed, kind of like this.
3 hours later. The next day.
So that's the first undercoat, which is a zinc-based paint. I'm going to paint the inside yellow. I took a chopped out piece of my control cabinet to the hardware store so they could use their paint sensor or whatever to match that paint, but they couldn't get a decent measurement, so I just did it visually. And as you can see, it's banana. So I got them to mix a small can of it. Alright, I got mail. Do you guys watch Andy Pugh's channel? Andy's one of the super experienced, super helpful guys on the Linux CNC forum, and he's just done amazing stuff. The Holbrook lathe, which he converted, is just a masterpiece. He got a casting made up to make an adapter to hold his Camlock chuck directly onto his mill. One of his prototypes turned out undersized. Yeah, luckily there was enough meat on it to turn it down to Camlock size 3, which is what my lathe takes, so that's awesome. Go check out Andy's YouTube channel because he's doing amazing stuff. I just need to paint it Reseda green, and I guess I'd better get a chuck. Next up I need to mask it, flip it over, and paint the other side green. Well, probably one layer of undercoat first. I'm just using these screws as standoffs just to get it up off the table when I paint the other side. Now I did notice a couple of spots. Let me just bring you in here. I did notice a few spots like this. Now I'll just sand back the worst of the bumps and ugliness. Well, it's had its first couple of layers of undercoat, so it's time to block it back, see what blemishes remain that I still need to put a bit of filler in, and then look towards final undercoating. It's not a terribly good surface that I got with my undercoating because my gun wasn't adjusted or wasn't clean, so I'm blocking it back with 320 grade sandpaper. Well, my paint gun has started to really suck, and I think the problem is blockage. So I've got the gun in some paint thinners, and I'm going to give it a zip with the ultrasonic cleaner to try and see if that'll break up the hard caked on paint that must be inside it. I think I'll soak it overnight and then do it a bit more tomorrow. Alright, I think I've done the final touch up with Bog, otherwise known as body filler. I'm really not sure if I'm doing this right, but I always seem to sand off about 90% of the paint that I put on. At least the undercoat. I do know of one aircraft accident where sanding of paint was a major contributor to the accident itself. Basically, it was an XL Airways A320 out of Perpignan. I'll put a link to the excellent air accident investigation report in the comments below. Plane was coming off lease, so it was getting repainted. They sanded off the paint, and then to wash off the paint dust, they used a very high pressure water supply, kind of like a fire hose. Unfortunately, it forced water over the seals of the angle of attack indicators on both sides. When they went to flight test the aircraft, they had to do an alpha protection test, which is kind of like a stall test the stall warning system. As I understand it, in France, if you need to do a flight test, you have to apply 2 days in advance to air traffic control. XL Airways didn't do this. On the morning, a different XL Airways aircraft came out of maintenance, also did the same sort of thing. When they were up at altitude and they requested a block clearance to fly variable altitudes to be able to do maneuvers, the controller worked out that they were doing a flight test which they hadn't applied for and put in an occurrence report on it. So now later in the day, a second XL Airways aircraft goes up, also without having declared a flight test, and the controllers immediately refused it and said, no, don't do this. As the plane climbed and the air got colder, the water that had gone past the O-rings of the angle of attack indicators froze, freezing the angle of attack indicators in a fixed position. You don't really notice that though, because when you're flying at high speed, the angle of attack doesn't change that much. Although the computer's already always monitoring to make sure that the angle of attack signal is logical as compared to airspeed, probably also flight path vector. At high speed, there's not enough variation in the angle of attack indicator for it to trigger a fault. The plane's now up at altitude. They got denied by air traffic control because you're not allowed to do this without an approval. If I understand it correctly, the air crew decided to just wait till descent when they were having a variable altitude anyway and do the test in descent. But unfortunately, in descent, they had both quite a thick band of cloud and also, I believe, traffic. So by the time they came out of cloud and away from traffic, they were very low, like 3,000 feet, 1,000 meters above the Mediterranean. And for whatever reason, the pilots decided to go ahead and start doing this test. The reduced power, start pulling back on the control column, speeds decreasing. The investigators found that the speed tape would have given an erroneously low stall speed, and basically they just kept pulling until they stalled the aircraft. And I believe the secondary stall was then a wing drop stall and they crashed. One of the major contributing factors was just sanding the aircraft and washing it off with too much power. Unfortunately, I kind of suck at the whole preparation thing. This surface has got a little bit of a curve outwards, and I guess I didn't put enough bog on, and then I painted it and bogged it and painted it and bogged it. Now I've put more bog on. I've still got some defects to improve on. So a bit of porosity there. I really hope this will be the last bit of body filling I need to do, because it would be nice to get on to the final painting.
1 hour later!
At least here on the door, I really am down to a final sanding of the undercoat, just with 600 grade paper. And once that's done, it'll be time for final paint. Let's hope this is the last sanding, because I'm really getting sick of this. Let's throw some more undercoat on that and see how it looks.
One nap later.
As is always the case with this sort of job, the most perfect part is of course the back, which goes against the wall and will never be seen. I think I'm all done with all the undercoating. It's time for a top coat. Phil, one of the guys I met through this channel, had this paint, which is almost a perfect match for the Schaublin. I undercoated this test piece, put some of this on top, and it doesn't seem to be reacting. So let's go. Top coat at last.
Many unbearable hours later.
Well, I don't think anybody's going to confuse me for a painter, but this is coming out quite well. It's a wee bit of dust that's settled on it, but I'll give it a light sandback and a second coat. Also here the painting's coming along quite decently. There's a bit of orange peel, but mostly it's looking okay. Gentle sandback, one more layer of paint, and I should be finished.
"72 hours later.
So how does this look, huh? I think this is the best part of painting. There will be a future video where I then finish this off. I still need to machine in the mounting holes and also need to make the cams, pull in the pull studs, but it's a cool part. Thanks very much, Andy. Okay, I've got a bit of an overlap here. I need to overlice the holes for the hinges a little bit, just to move this out 5mm. Well, it's been quite a long journey to get this resized and reinstalled, but now that that's done, I can continue on with reassembly, I guess. I'm pretty happy about how this chop job came out. Don't think it looks too bad. There should be plenty of space in here for all of the electrical hardware and most of the pneumatics. Long-time viewers of my channel are probably just as happy as I am that there's going to be no more videos about chopping up control cabinets. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.